Hey y'all, Jet here, and welcome to my video on Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, a video game released in 2010 with pretty good reviews considering it got a sequel and a threequel which kinda doesn't follow the previous formula of the games. It's a very weird rabbit hole. I don't want to get into it. What better way to start this off by talking about the gameplay of the game? Now, for this section, I'm going to be talking about it with the Xbox terms, so for those who play on PlayStation or PC, you might want to find a translation on YouTube or Google, because this is strictly for Xbox. Now, standardly, you use the right trigger to drive, that is what accelerates you forward, and using the left trigger will allow you to brake, reverse, and drift while driving. Obviously, when you drift, like most standard car racers out there, drifting will allow you to boost if you hold onto that drift for a set amount of seconds. That can give you a boost forward and obviously keep you ahead of the race. And of course, we have the power-ups, which pressing the A button will allow you to use them. That can be bombs, springs, the all-star move, anything that the item boxes give you. Pretty standard controls, you use a left stick to move, or the D-pad actually, which I didn't even know about. And, yeah, it's pretty standard kart racing, except instead of using X or A to drive, you use the right trigger, which I personally enjoy more than using my A button. I feel like it's just better for most racing games to use the triggers, it feels natural to me. Now, what the tutorial doesn't mention is that you can also look behind you using the X button on your Xbox controller, square for PlayStation, and do tricks. Now, tricks work a bit differently than how it does in Transformed and TSR, where, using your right stick, you can flip it up, down, left, or right to do spins or flips and whatnot. In Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, you use your drift button, that being the left trigger. If you tap it while you're in air after a ramp or a boost off a ramp, you will do some small tricks, which I think give you boost. I have never, really noticed a big difference myself, but I'm sure that they do give it to you, which I think it's, Honestly, I prefer the Transformed and TSR ones more, just because, but just because of how much it's a risk and reward thing, because you can flick the right stick as much as you want, but there's a limit, and also if you don't land it right, you lose all your boost, which I think is a pretty good takeaway in case you were being too greedy. Now, would I say I prefer this over Mario Kart or Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing Transformed, or even TSR Crash Team Racing for that matter? Honestly, I think my favorite controlled racing game would be Crash Team Racing, but that's not to say Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing doesn't have its own good controls. It's fairly tight with how you drift and how you control, and when you get hit, you don't halt to a stop like you do with Mario Kart, which, sure, some people might argue that it's, it's a punishment for getting, hit, and therefore you have to pick your speed back up. But I think for Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, I feel like it's a way to show that you can still keep up regardless if you got hit. It's a really good way to show that, in a lot of these clips that you see, I spin out, but I'm still able to keep, my place just because of, keeping back up. And I think that's really good because I feel like everybody is balanced. I don't, there's no kart picks, or, the meta, all that stuff. It's just standardized kart racing, pick who you want to play as, and just drive right along. And honestly, I like that. If I had to rank it, I feel like it would be my number 2 favorite, right beneath Crash Team Racing, in all honesty. Because that's just how fun it is to play. I don't really do it much justice. You have to play this game for yourself to really understand and appreciate just how well it controls. And before I move on, let me ask you this. What's the point in having a good controlling game if you don't have a good cast of characters? And to be fair, I feel like this game's cast is just a bit lackluster, but only in the base roster, because we have some really dime a dozen characters in the shop. which I will get to shortly. Now, for the base roster, you have, obviously, the main titular character, Sonic. You have Ai, Billy Hatcher from Billy Hatcher. You have Amigo from Samba de Amigo, Eggman, Shadow, Amy, and Tails. Those are your starting characters. A pretty decent base set, if not for the fact that most of them are just, Sonic franchise characters. But we'll get into the cream of the crop in a bit. Now, before I begin on the shop, if you want my real honest opinion, this base roster kind of sucks. It's, like I said earlier, it's mainly just Sonic characters with the exception of Ai from Monkey Ball, Billy Hatcher from Billy Hatcher, and Amigo from Samba de Amigo. It's just about 6 Sonic characters and just 3 Sega representations, which, granted, the shop does have a bit more. However, the base roster, again, like I said, it's just lackluster because, it's a Sonic and Sega All-Stars game. Of course, Sonic is the main character, so yeah, he can have his friends tag along, but really? 6? Right off the bat? Come on. But for the new racers that you can unlock, you can get Big and Knuckles from Sonic, another, Sonic representation. You get Ulala from Space Channel 5, a Sega series that I've never played before, but I've heard good things about it, so maybe I'll play it on the channel someday. Zobio and Zobiko, a couple, if I'm not mistaken, from House of the Dead EX, another series that I've never touched in my life, but I'm willing to try it out. BD Joe, the uncle himself from Crazy Taxi, a game that I've loved and I've actually played the arcade version of a lot of times. Jackie Bryan and Akira Yuki from Virtua Fighter, a series that I haven't touched either, so I can't say much about them. Ryo Hazuki from one of my favorite Sega game series of all time, Shenmue, which I'm actually currently in the middle of a playthrough. Really love it. It's really fun, and I just love it because it's one of, the most best Sega games, in my opinion, of all time. The Choo Choo Pilots from Choo Choo Rocket, if I'm not mistaken, but I think they might be in Space Channel 5 too. I don't remember. We got Mobo and Robo from Bonanza Bros. I never played it. Alex Kidd from Alex Kidd. Never touched it. And Opa Opa from Sega's Shoot 'em Up. Darius, if I'm not mistaken either. Now you can get all these mediocre piece of shits in the item shop. The way to get them is by getting a bunch of Sega points. You unlock them by doing missions or making various places and races. It's standard, cart stuff. I like this roster. My favorite roster out of all the games, period. Transform has Knights and Reala, though. I'll give them that. But I think this game's roster is a bit more because it just goes to show how extensive and, really big Sega's IP is for them to bring out, the cream of the crop, the lowest of the low and the mediocre of the mediocre, just to put them into one game. Right next to the GOAT, Choo Choo Rocket. Now, to give this video a proper end, I just want to go over just how beautiful the game looks. For a 2010 game on 360, PS3, and PC, back in the day, a lot of games weren't really optimized well, or they didn't really have the customization that you think they would have to boost up the resolution, textures, and whatnot. But I'll give it this. This game still looks really good today. I like the casino park level that you see right here. A lot of the stages just look crisp and clean, and sometimes honestly ripped straight out of the game, like the Jet Set Radio tracks, for example, or the Monkey Ball tracks. This game gave birth to a new style that I think Sega would do justice and transformed, and then do their own thing in TSR. But make no mistake, this game still holds up today, and honestly, I think you should get it now before it ends up inevitably getting delisted off of Steam. Now that Sega's doing that whole new thing that they're doing with delisting old Sonic and Dreamcast games and whatnot. I think it's a good bang for your buck, especially if you're looking for a good racing game. There's no online, sadly, which it really is confusing, considering it has online, both Transform and this have online on the console ports, but I think it's just local for PC, which really awkward decision there, Sega, really. But I have played this with a couple of friends locally, And it was a blast. Absolutely amazing, fun time. So I think it's a really good bang for your buck if you want to have some Sega fun on a Friday night after a long day of class, work, or, you know, whatever you're doing. You guys have made it to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching, for checking out my channel, and for subscribing. Thank you so much for hanging on while I edited this video and took my sweet ass time because I had other stuff to do. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much to my 3 Patreon supporters, Chimp, Rat Attack, and Joe. These 3 have donated to my Patreon and were the first, so, you know, shout out to them. I hope you guys consider subscribing more to my Patreon. I do, I'll give off sneak peeks, art prompts, all that extra stuff, you know. Something just to keep you guys, you know, busy. It's totally optional, you know. I don't want you guys to feel obligated to do it. It's completely optional. Everybody will be treated the exact same here as they would on my Patreon. Without further ado, my name is Jet. Thank you for tuning in to The Wave. And I'll catch you guys on the flip side.